What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. Linebacker is a massive position of need for the New York Giants this offseason. It was on full display during the divisional round of the playoffs when the Eagles unfortunately ran all over the Giants' defense. You had Jalen Smith, Gerard Davis missing tackles left and right, missing assignments. It was ugly. The Giants need to upgrade at linebacker. And yesterday afternoon, a certain linebacker across the NFL was released into free agency that could make a lot of sense for the Giants if they're willing to pull a little bit of extra cash out of their wallets to sign him, and that is Bobby Wagner. The Los Angeles Rams released Bobby Wagner after just one season with the team, and he instantly enters the market as the top free agent linebacker. So, should the Giants go ahead, make a splash signing with Bobby Wagner, and bring him to the Big Apple? I'm not sure, but we're going to go ahead and discuss it today on Fireside Giants. Make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this discussion, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our uploads. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, and what are your thoughts on Bobby Wagner potentially being a target for the Giants?
Doing fantastic on this Friday afternoon, my friends. Now, we all know the linebacker position is a massive, tremendous weakness for this Giants team. We've talked about David Long. We've talked about Tremaine Edmonds, Jeremy Pratt. There are some really good options in free agency that, could be long-term solutions. We're not totally sure if they're going to be those LB1s, those lockdown guys are going to make a huge difference, but they're a lot better than what we have now. So we do know that upgrades are available on the market if they don't look to the draft, which I do think they should still make an acquisition maybe in the third round, mid-rounds. I know a lot of people have mentioned Trenton Simpson. We've already looked at him. Really good prospect out of Clemson. He's got speed. Man, the guy's physical. He's awesome to watch. He can do a lot of things for you. But he's not this massive run stopper like Bobby Wagner is. What you like about Bobby Wagner, and what a lot of people will say around the league, is that he's one of the smartest guys out there when it comes to diagnosing plays pre-snap. He is one of the best middle linebackers. He does not miss tackles, and he's been an all-pro for the majority of his career. If you're a Giants fan and you say you don't want Bobby Wagner, I don't know what to tell you. A lot of people on Twitter were saying he's washed, he's cooked, blah, blah, blah. I think that's total nonsense. If you look at his stats, he is far from cooked. He had 140 combined tackles this past season, a career-high 6 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. In fact, he had his best season as a pass rusher from the linebacker spot with the Rams. He's only 32 years old. He's coming off, he's been a Pro Bowler for 7-8 seasons straight. He's been an All-Pro for the majority of those. So last year he didn't make the Pro Bowl, but I think he was a second-team All-Pro player. Yeah, he was a second-team All-Pro player. This guy just consistently puts together ridiculous seasons year in and year out. If you're looking for an upgrade at linebacker, a proven commodity, this is the guy you want to go with. And it's not going to cost a ton. We talked about David Long getting in the range of $7 to $8 million. In fact, that's kind of what I think Bobby Wagner is going to end up getting on the open market, because he signed a 5-year, $50 million deal with the Rams. So that's only $10 million per season. And that was last year. So now you look at him a year older. He didn't make, the All-Pro first team. Some would say he took a step back. That may help the Giants in this scenario financially. $8 to $9 million per season for an All-Pro level linebacker like Bobby Wagner for a couple of years while they figure out the linebacker spot, get some good backups in place, and who will eventually take over. I see this as a massive win. I see this as a tremendous addition to a Wink Martindale scheme that would now have one of the best tacklers in the game, one of the smartest middle linebackers in the game. He's capable of it all. He's smart as hell. His IQ's through the freaking roof. He can help some of these youngsters really round out their game, lock down the middle of this defense, and help our defensive front. How many times did we see Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, or Leonard Williams, open up these gaps for the linebackers to fill, and there was no linebackers there to be found. Jalen Smith would pick the wrong hole, or, Tate Crowder's cut by the midway point. Bobby Wagner knows where to go. He would fit in seamlessly with these type of veterans. Pairing Wagner with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, if they do manage to keep Leo, just think about the results that come of that. Think about having a guy like this at the second level. There is not many weaknesses or cons to even muster. If you're looking at a 2-year contract, averaging $8 to $9 million per season, while you figure out linebacker, get some depth, build around it, say less. I'm on board with this. I don't know what there is not to like, to be honest.
I agree with you. I mean, Bobby Wagner has been arguably the best linebacker in the NFL for the past decade. He is a generational talent, one of the best linebackers arguably of all time. Bobby Wagner is him, absolutely him. And he's been selected to at least the first or second team All-Pro teams in each of the last 9 seasons. That is literally a decade of dominance from the linebacker position, and I don't see that slowing down just yet. I think that Bobby Wagner still has plenty left in the tank. He only missed 4 tackles throughout the entirety of the 2022 season on 140 tackle attempts. That is absurd. He's still one of the best linebackers in the NFL, despite being 32 years old. But since he is 32 years old, he just got released by the Rams. He only made it through 1 year of that deal. He could be had probably pretty cheap. I think that the Giants, if they were to go out there and sign Bobby Wagner, they could probably get him on a short-term, maybe 3-year deal worth $30 million in total. You could backload it for when the salary cap increases in the next 2 seasons. You don't have to pay him a lot up front. You can have a really small cap hit and sign Bobby Wagner, and while you figure out these other extensions for Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and maybe Julian Love. So I think that Bobby Wagner can be had for a very affordable price, and he can also be the captain in the middle of the Giants defense that they so desperately need. I mean, you mentioned it. With that linebacking core that we had last season, you could not stop the run. We saw it happen time and time again where the Giants would let up 2, maybe 300 rushing yards in a game. It was utterly absurd. That won't happen anymore with Bobby Wagner in the fold. I mean, you got a front 7 that has guys like Kayvon Thibodeau. Hopefully he comes into his own as a run defender, but Dexter Lawrence, one of the premier run defenders in the NFL. Leonard Williams, same story there. And then you throw Bobby Wagner into the mix, you're talking about one of the best defensive fronts in football. And Wink Martindale historically has always had one of the best run defending defenses throughout the entirety of his career over in Baltimore. He comes to the Giants, they really struggle in run defense, but I don't blame that on Wink Martindale. Like, a lot of people were like, what is Wink Martindale thinking? What is he doing? It wasn't Martindale's fault, okay? The Giants just didn't have any talent at the off-ball linebacker position. So to go from 0 talent at all to the top talent in the NFL with Bobby Wagner, dude, that would change the Giants' defense overnight. Like, literally night and day difference when you add a guy like Bobby Wagner. I mean, he is one of the best linebackers in the NFL. You can probably only name 2 to 3 who are better than him, and he's been one of the best, again, for the last decade. So I love the idea of bringing Wagner to the Giants. I don't think it would actually cost him that much. But, Alex, I'm curious to know, what is your upper price range? Like, what's your limit here for Bobby Wagner? What's the most you're willing to pay him on a year-by-year basis?
So, you did mention something. I just want to hit on one thing first regarding Wink Martindale and how his defense is very much predicated on stopping the run, making offenses one-dimensional. He mentioned this actually in the preseason this past year. He said, our goal is to stop the run because then you make a team one-dimensional. You force them to throw the football so that you know what's coming. Now you limit what they can actually do, right? You can take most of their playbook away in the running game, and then you force them to commit to the pass, and then you really can lock things down. Bobby Wagner, obviously, and we haven't even mentioned this. Who knows where Bobby Wagner wants to go, right? He's a veteran. He's still very, very talented, can really contribute. He probably wants to go to a contender. The Giants would have to convince him, we are going to contend next year. Like, we have a good team. We're going to spend our draft capital on getting a top receiver. We're going to really add some big pieces. We're going to bring back Daniel Jones. Our defense, led by one of the best defensive coordinators in the past decade, if not more, is going to be manning this thing still. He's still under helm. We have tremendous talent. We're going to be keeping Leonard Williams. We have one of the best up-and-coming defensive tackles in Dexter Lawrence, one of the really exciting young rookies in Kayvon Thibodeau. Azeez Ojulari should be healthy. Then you have Adoree Jackson, our cornerbacks, and Xavier McKinney. I mean, you have a ridiculous defense full of tons of talent there, and building on it is essential. I think Bobby Wagner, you could convince him, especially because you have some of the best coaches in football, that the Giants can be a good team next year and they can compete. Now the question is, you asked me how much would be my cap. I think $9 million per season would be my cap for Bobby Wagner, just because he made $10 million last year. He signed a deal for 5 years, $10 million per. I think $9 million is reasonable because he's coming off a year that maybe he wouldn't even consider his best, but nonetheless his numbers are still stout. I will say this though, I do wonder, if the Giants value linebacker as much as we hope they do, because you look at what kind of happened in Baltimore a couple of years ago. After Wink Martindale lost C.J. Mosley, that entire defense was never the same. C.J. Mosley was the linchpin of that entire defense. He was unbelievable in stopping the run, unbelievable in stopping the pass. He did it all. The second they lost him, they replaced him with Patrick Queen. It doesn't really amount to much. Their run defense fell apart. Their cornerbacks getting injured. It just fell apart at the seams, and they end up moving on from Wink because it just wasn't a sustainable strategy anymore. So I'll say this. I think that they value linebacker, but because they didn't have many assets last year, they couldn't plug it. They tried to get a Darian Beavers. And think about it. Darian Beavers is a bigger, slower, really high IQ guy. He actually, No, he's not Bobby Wagner. This is not what I'm trying to say. But he does have like similar tangible traits, in the fact that he's a little bit slower. He's really big, really good IQ. He sniffs out, recognizes things. Bobby Wagner's really great at all those things. He kind of had a similar frame to him. Bobby Wagner, if you look at this guy's arms, they're like freaking like trucks, though. He's like 16 wheelers for arms. So it's pretty impressive to see that he still maintains his athletic profile. But, obviously proven over a very long period of time. I would love to have him and then have a guy like Darren Beavers learning from him. And I think that's the natural kind of progression I'd love to see. You go and get Bobby Wagner because he's not just going to, and also he's known to be one of the best leaders in the game for what it's worth. Like, talk about the tangibles. He is intangibly one of the best guys to have in a locker room that you can find. He's been on some of the best teams. He's a tremendous player. He's been he was there when the Seattle Seahawks, that defense was just unbelievable. You know what I mean? He knows what a great defense looks like and what it's composed of. He could be that kind of secondary coach for the Giants and help a lot of these youngsters. A guy like Darren Beavers, I think he could learn a ton from a guy like Bobby Wagner. So when Bobby Wagner ends up leaving one day, Beavers kind of just assumes that role and is ready for it. He might even start alongside Bobby Wagner for all we know and learn from him at the same time. So I just love all the different variables that he brings to the table. It's not just 140 plus tackles every single season, good pass rushing metrics last year, the ability to diagnose plays pre-snap and communicate well with the defense, but it's also his leadership qualities and the ability that other players can learn from him and start to get better because of his presence. And when you have great players around you, you elevate your game. Everyone rises to the occasion, in my opinion. So, what are your thoughts about that? Just kind of the guys already on the roster, learning from him, the different things that just you can't really put into words, you can't really value because it's not production based, but the intangibles that really come with bringing in an all pro level player like this that's just been proven over such a long period of time.
Well, I think that's what you're paying for. That's why the price tag might not be cheap, because you're paying for proven talent that you know exactly what you're getting with Bobby Wagner. He's one of the best linebackers in the game, and he's a tremendous leader. He was the heart and soul of that Seahawks defense. He was still a great leader when he was with the Los Angeles Rams. He is a tremendous leader, so you know that you're getting someone who impacts your team in more than one way, not by just being a good football player, but also by being a good teammate and a good leader. So Bobby Wagner definitely adds extra value to himself because of those traits. Now, another thing that you mentioned, though, is where will Bobby Wagner want to go? He probably wants to go to a contender. Yes, that's exactly what Adam Schefter reported yesterday when he broke the news that Wagner was released. He said that the Rams and Wagner mutually agreed to part ways because Wagner wanted to win and the Rams needed more cap space. So it was a mutual agreement because Wagner doesn't see the future of Los Angeles being all that bright. Probably most people don't. They were 5-12 this past season. They lost a lot of games, and they have a lot of salary cap space tied up in big name players that are probably aging and declining over the next couple of years. So Wagner, looking to get out of that, probably wants to go to a good young team that has the potential to win. Good young team that has potential to win, the New York Giants. They just made their first postseason berth since 2016. Brian Dable, AP NFL Coach of the Year. The Giants went 9-7-1, and they could have won a lot more games had they had some extra pieces like a dominant linebacker in the middle of their defense. So when you look at Bobby Wagner, does he fit with the Giants? I think yes. I think the Giants would be a fit for him, and he is a fit for the Giants. The Giants need a good linebacker. He wants to go to a young team that's ready to win. I think that's exactly what the Giants are, and major plus here, Wink Martindale, who just got looked at for many head coaching jobs, he would be coaching Bobby Wagner, and Wagner is definitely familiar with how great of a coach Wink Martindale is, and I think that Wink Martindale, we've seen time and time again, the emphasis that he places on that linebacker position during his time in Baltimore. You said, will the Giants place that emphasis? I believe 1,000% they will. I think that they will go into this offseason making it a priority to add some linebackers to this team, and I think that Bobby Wagner could be their top target just because it would do so much for Wink Martindale and this defense just to have a veteran presence and a really solid defensive playmaker like Bobby Wagner on the team. But when you look at Wagner, here's one of the other barriers to signing him. Now, traditionally, he played in a 4-3 defense for the entirety of his career with the Seattle Seahawks. The Giants run an aggressive 3-4 blitz-heavy defense. Is that skill set that he has, where he has to be a real good coverage linebacker in a 4-3, is that translatable to the pass rushing, man coverage heavy 3-4? That's one question that I do have here, and that could be a reason why the Giants maybe don't view him as a good fit, because he's not a good scheme fit. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that one, Alex.
Yeah, the pass coverage kind of variable does at least concern me a little bit, but I also feel like we had none of that last year either. So at the very least, you're getting one of the best run stoppers in the game and one of the best linebackers all around. You can always draft a pass coverage linebacker in the mid round, someone that's like very specialized in that way. Maybe you bring back Landon Collins and he can help in that facet. A veteran, cheap deal, see what he can do. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought back Jalen Smith as a reserve for what it's worth, and not to say that he's a good pass coverage guy, but more so just depth. Like, he should be depth. Jalen Smith is a good depth linebacker. He's not a starting linebacker, and I think we can all agree with that. But I don't really mind. I don't really care about the entire pass coverage concept because it really is about, if we can stop the run effectively. A lot of the games that we lost is because we couldn't stop the run, not because we couldn't stop the pass, even though our linebackers weren't generally great at that metric or in that category. So in my opinion, you stop the run effectively. Bobby Wagner does that for you. And at the end of the day, it's not going to cost you a ton. Like, he's not going to make Roquan Smith money. He's at the back end of his prime, but that doesn't mean we can't juice the last bit of it. We can't just get the most out of that last bit of just elite level linebacker play. And maybe we build something really special in the meantime. Maybe he's that last key piece. And, look what Roquan Smith did for the Baltimore Ravens. And that's actually like the perfect example, by the way. The Ravens defense ranked 20th in points per game before they acquired, maybe it's 22nd, before they acquired Roquan Smith. After they acquired Roquan Smith, they were second in the NFL in points allowed per game. What does a great linebacker do for you? Well, the Baltimore Ravens just did it. It's Wink Martindale's former defense, obviously. Bobby Wagner and the Giants, man, it seems like a match made in heaven. But again, the question is, does he even want to come here? Does he even view us as a potential contender? Maybe he wants to just go to the Chiefs and take a minimal deal and win a ring. You know what I mean? Like, that may be something I would do. Would be like, he's been paid a ton over the course of his career, a lot of money. Maybe he doesn't care about the money anymore. He just wants to go to a Chiefs team that can win now, or maybe the Bengals, who could use him. I know they have a couple guys hitting free agency and Jeremy Pratt, but in the end, I think they have Logan Wilson as well. But I think he's under contract. So you're looking at a lot of different teams. Maybe the Bills, they're losing Tremaine Edmonds. Maybe they go on and sign Bobby Wagner. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of teams that are in a better spot than the Giants, so he has to want to come here. But if he's willing to, I wouldn't even hesitate. I wouldn't even like skip a beat. I would be signing him. I'd be having him sign on the dotted line immediately because he changes the entire course of this defense, in my opinion. So I think we can kind of round it out here in saying that Bobby Wagner would be a great addition. And yes, is he in the back of his prime? Sure. But everything he offers is so worthwhile because we haven't had a player of his caliber at the position in probably over a decade.
It's probably been even longer than that. I mean, I don't know if we've ever had an off-ball linebacker. Well, we definitely have back in the 80s, Carl Banks and the greats like that. But in my lifetime, I don't know if we've ever had an off-ball linebacker that plays at the level of Bobby Wagner has for the last decade. But I guess, as you mentioned, we've pretty much covered all the bases. That wraps this one up the same way that Bobby Wagner wraps up running backs in the A-gap. I was waiting to throw that one out there. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode and comment your thoughts on Bobby Wagner down below. Alex and I, we're both on board with signing him, but we want to know what you think down below. And make sure to subscribe to Fireside Giants so you don't miss an episode, and ring the bell so you get notified every time we upload. We'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.